Hey everyone! Recently, a lot of people have asked me how should they get started with open source. In this video, I'm going to try to answer that question in a hopefully beginner-friendly way. First of all, you should understand why you might want to contribute to open source. Some of the common reasons are, first of all, to learn fast as a software engineer. It's a really good way to do that because when you send your code to open source, you actually get to have some feedback on your code, and that helps you learn faster as an engineer. And then the second common reason is to network with other engineers. You know, people make friends through open source. Some of them meet their mentors or their mentees or even their potential employers. And some of them, I know for a fact, they get jobs through open source contributions. So that's a really good reason for that too. And then the third reason is to experiment with new tech. You know, for your job or for school, you might be using one particular type of tech, and you might want to experiment with something new. So that's a really good way to do that as well. And finally, a fourth common reason is to have proof that you can do the type of work that you want to do in the future. You know, if you don't have a job where you use the type of tech that you want to use, you know, open source is a good way to practice and actually show to your potential employers that you can do the type of work that you want to do. So those are some of the common reasons, but find what works for you, find what's meaningful to you, and then stick with it. Okay, after that, the second step after that, after knowing what you want to contribute, is to get started. And I say that because you should familiarize yourself with the mechanics of, you know, forking a repo, branching it, committing your change, pushing it, and then sending a PR or a pull request. You can actually practice that with this repo called first contributions. You know, there are other ways of doing it, but this one's really good because it's a repo that actually walks you through the whole process of, you know, making your first open source contribution. So, you know, you can basically walk through this README and, you know, read everything, try to understand everything, and then start your basically open source journey that way. There are a few different ways to do what's specified in this README document. One is through the terminal, if you're familiar with the terminal. The second way is through GitHub Desktop. That's also a great way to do that. And the third way, which I'm going to show in a second, is through GitHub's website, which is, in my opinion, the simplest way and the easiest way. So let me just show you how to do that. And there are a few different ways to do that as well. One is to click this fork button, which just means, you know, copying this original repo. By the way, a repo is basically like a folder or a collection of code, and this is the original repo. You can click this fork button to copy this repo to your own account. So I could do that, but there's a simpler way to do what I'm about to do. What I want to do is I want to edit this file, contributors.md, because that's what they suggest for your first contribution, you know, on this repo. So you're supposed to add your own name to this contributors.md document, and you can do that by clicking this edit button. So that's really simple. And I'm actually not going to do that because, you know, I did this earlier. I already added my name here. But let's just pretend that, you know, I want to add my name here. So, you know, whatever your name and your GitHub profile link is, just add it at the end of the file. And then you can, you know, basically propose that particular change. So instead of adding my name, because it's already there, I'm going to delete my name. I hope they don't find it annoying because I did this a few times, but let's do it anyway, just for demonstration purposes. So I just deleted my name. It was there before. You know, if you're just getting started, you can add your name there, and then I can click propose changes. So what happens when I do that is two things. GitHub automatically forked this repo to my account. So it was right here, github.com/firstcontributions/firstcontributions, but now it's also at github.com/ykdojo/firstcontributions. So this is my copy of this repo, and that's what that means to fork a repo. And then it also made what's called a branch. So this is another copy. This is a copy of my repo. So my repo, what I forked from the main repo is a copy of the main repo. And then this branch called patch1 is a copy of my repo. So, that can get confusing if you're new to this process. But, once you understand the process, it's not that complicated. And I'm going to explain more of that in a bit more detail in a second. But anyway, GitHub did all of that for me. What's important is that it made a copy of this original repo, the folder, the collection of the code, and it also made the change that I was trying to make. So in this particular case, the change is deleting this line. In your particular case, that might be adding your own name here. And then I can click create pull request. So this is saying, hey, first contributions, the organizer of this code, the owner of this code, or the maintainers, I would like to make this change. And then what I can do here is, change the title of this PR if I want to, leave a comment. And then what I should do here is to check everything that changed. It's going to show the list of files that changed in this PR. And then I can click create pull request. I'm not going to actually click that because like I said, I've already done this a few times. I don't want to do it one more time. But what happens in theory is when I click, create pull request, this basically change request is sent to the maintainers or the owner of this repo. And then, typically we go back and forth. This is a pretty simple one. They'll probably just accept the change and merge it, or they'll copy this change into their original repo. But we have this whole process, and then once they accept it and merge it, this particular change is going to be baked into their original repo. So that's pretty cool. What that means, in case you're not familiar with it, let's say you're looking at Next.js's document, their documentation. You find a typo, you can just fix it, find where that is on GitHub exactly, and then propose a change, PR, saying that there's a typo, I want to fix this typo. And then once they accept it, it's actually going to be on their official documentation. So, I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty cool. Okay, and just in case you're not too familiar with the basics of forking and pull requests, I already talked about that a little bit, but I wanted to talk about it in a hopefully more visual way. So for that one, I'm gonna use my own repo as an example. It's called dfang. You can read more about it if you're interested, but it's going to be sort of like an open source alternative to things like Glassdoor and LeetCode. And I'm just using this as an example here. So here I have the original repo because I'm the owner of this project. If you go to this URL, github.com/ykdojo/dfang, you'll be able to see the original code. It contains all the code for this project. What I recommend for not just for this project but for any project is just read through README and then read through contributing.md or whatever their contribution guideline is, and then find out exactly how they recommend that you contribute to their project. Because different projects have different guidelines, and you want to be respectful of that. So after reading through those, what you can do is you can fork, again, copy this original repo into your own account. So let's say your account is called, let's say this is your account's username. when you click fork, so it's right here at the top right corner of GitHub's UI. When you fork, it copies this repo to your own account. And then branching means that you make a copy of this what's called the main branch into a separate separate place. And the purpose of branching is to specify what kind of change you're going to make exactly. So you might want to change the landing page a little bit. You might want to fix the landing page. In that case, you branch this main repo into a new branch called fix landing page, fix hyphen landing hyphen page, something like that. And then you make all the changes you want to make in the code here. So that way you're not making any changes to the main branch. You can do that if you want to, but branching it makes it a little bit cleaner, the whole process. So you make all the changes you want to make in this branch called fix landing page. You fix the landing page, and then once you're satisfied with your code, check everything, you can send a PR, pull request, to the original repo. And once this is accepted by the owner or the one of the maintainers of this project, they do what's called, what I showed you earlier, they merge this change into this repo. So okay, I hope that's clear. I wanted to show this just in case my explanation earlier wasn't too clear. And then here's more information about branching and merging. So now let's say this is in your repo. So this is after you forked the original repo into your own account. You start with the main branch, and again, the purpose of branching is to work on a particular feature. And the nice thing about branching is you can branch the main branch into multiple things, multiple places. So you might have fixed landing page, and you might have change link colors, let's say. And you might start with this branch, fixed landing page. Let's say you start working on it, and you get bored. You want to work on something else. Then what you can do is you can branch from your main branch into change link colors, your new branch, and then you start working on changing link colors. So that might be unrelated to fixed landing page, but then the nice thing is you can switch back and forth, and then you can work on different things basically. There's more advanced stuff too. For example, you can branch from a branch as well, but let's not worry about that for now. And again, once you branch into this new place called change link colors, when you're satisfied with your change, you can do one of the two things. You can merge into your own main branch. You might want to do that just to keep the main up to date, or you might want to do that if this is your own project. This whole graphics applies if this whole thing is your own project as well. You might be the owner of this whole thing. And then another thing you might want to do is you might want to send a PR, pull request, from this branch that you made into the original repo. So that might be, in this particular example, that would be this project. Okay, so that's a little explanation about forking, pull request, branching, and merging. And the reason I wanted to explain that is because someone asked me about it. I think it's unclear. It's hard to get your head around this whole concept, and I hope that was helpful. Okay, so once you're familiar with the mechanics of all of those things like forking, branching, and so on, the next step is to find a project to contribute to. There are a few common ways to find it. One is to check an open source library or tool that you use. If you've built at least a few projects, you've probably used a bunch of open source tools. So you can check some of them, you can check their docs, you can check their GitHub repos, and then try to contribute to them. Another good way to find projects is to find people on Twitter or YouTube or wherever else and check their projects, see if they need help. And then the third good way is to look for good first issues. This is a particular label that people use on GitHub. I'm gonna show you how to do that in a second. But the fourth way is to find, which open source companies are hiring and contribute to their projects. This might be a good way to do that if if your primary goal is to get a job. And contributing to open source, that's managed by open source companies, it doesn't guarantee that you'll be able to get a job, but it does increase your chances of getting noticed by those companies. Anyway, let's take a look at this one. So how do you look for good first issues on GitHub? Well, one way to do that is to come to my repo called dfan, again, just as an example. You can do that on any other repo, to be honest, but you can click issues, and then you can click good first issue. That filters the issues on this particular repo to only having the label good first issue. But you can do that globally on GitHub as well. So you can just either copy this syntax, or just type it out and then click all GitHub. So that way I'm searching for issues that are open that have the label good first issues. There are a lot of them, but you can filter through some of them through, for example, a language. I might want to find a good first issue for Python. And by the way, this is a label that people use to indicate that they're good issues to address or look at as a first-time contributor. So you can look through them just like that. This is a long list, and it can be pretty overwhelming, but this is definitely one way to find a good first issue. And there's help wanted, there's stuff like Hacktoberfest, and different labels for different issues. So try to experiment with that and see how it goes. That can be pretty overwhelming. So what I ended up doing is I ended up creating a repo that lists active repos for contributing. So that way you don't have to go through all of those like giant list of issues. You can go through this smaller list of things. The first one obviously is first contributions. Get started there, practice there, and then after that, if you want, you can check out one of my projects or any of these projects. I'm hoping this will help people find projects that they want to contribute to. So feel free to use it as a free resource. And if you know of any other repo that's good for either beginners or experienced people, just feel free to send a PR to this repo so other people will be able to hopefully find it as well. Okay, and the final thing I want to add is to keep going. It's totally fine to start small, for example, with a typofix. That's a very common way for open source contributors to get started with their open source journey. And then after that, it's important to just keep going. Don't be afraid to ask questions, get involved in communities, or try sending PRs. Try sending small PRs. One thing I want to mention is it's really important to communicate well when you get involved with open source. So good ways to do that is to maybe raise an issue, ask questions in issue threads or discussions, or maybe on one of their live forums. So for example, my project has a Discord forum. Other people have Discord group or Discord server, I should say, and other people have Slack groups or any of those things. So feel free to jump in and just ask a small question. If you send a giant PR right away before asking anything, it might get closed and you might get disappointed. So I recommend not doing that. I recommend starting small, just start by asking them questions. Asking how you can help, basically. Okay. And after that, I would say it's really important to be consistent, if you're serious about open source. If you're just, experimenting, or if you want to make small contributions, that's totally fine too. But, if you want to actually make a positive impact on your career as an open source contributor or as just a software engineer, it's important to, stay consistent and keep going with your open source contributions. So I personally recommend the 100 Days Open Source Challenge. It's kind of like 100 Days of Code, but for open source, and it's an open challenge, anyone can join, and you don't even have to do it publicly. But it's a good way to kind of keep yourself accountable and keep yourself more consistent. Okay, so those are the 4 steps for how to get started with open source. Knowing your why, getting started, becoming familiar with this mechanic of different things, and then finding a project to contribute to, and then keep going. The last thing I want to add is, it can be scary to try to contribute to a big significant project, let's say like React or Next.js, but don't be scared. I think everyone feels that way, but I've personally had this experience of trying to contribute to a big project. I was scared. I thought, okay, am I qualified to do that? But when I sent a small PR, they were nice about it. It got accepted. It got merged. So it's really nice. It's really nice feeling to have. Obviously there are these practical reasons to contribute to open source, as I mentioned earlier. But there's also this, feeling of I feel like doing something good, doing something for the good, because it's, open source after all. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. Thank you so much for watching this video the whole way. Feel free to find me on Twitter or Twitch, because I've been pretty active on those accounts, and we have a Discord server for my project, DFAN, but we use it for general purposes too, to talk about open source and coding in general. So feel free to join me there as well. I'm going to put all of those in the description. And thank you so much again for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.